So welcome everyone to the second session of the 2024 British Orienteering Development Conference, and many thanks for giving up your time this evening. So this is the second of our 12 sessions that are going to happen over the next 4 weeks. The Development Conference has been designed to contain a range of club development, coach development and skill development webinars and workshops, which we hope are really going to be relevant to you and your club. These are all based around the 4 key strategic plan themes of changing perceptions, creating engaging experiences, strengthening lifelong pathways, and providing foundations for success. And the aim of the conference is to provide you with some sort of key thoughts and actions for you and your club to thrive during 2024 and beyond. And we can, as we continue to work stronger together, developing our fantastic sport. So over to Joe to run through some housekeeping for this evening and introduce our fantastic speakers. Over to you, Joe.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Howard. So good evening, everybody, and welcome to this session of the Development Conference, which is Developing Stakeholder Relationships. So my name is Joe Worrell. Some of you know me from, I think it was Monday or Tuesday, and some of you will not have seen me before, but will be very sick of the sight of me probably very quickly after this conference. My role here is Club Support Officer at British Orienteering, but more importantly are our presenters for the evening. So first of all, we have Caroline Barchan from British Orienteering, who's our Find Your Way Project Officer. We have Andrew Evans from DFOC, and later on in the presentation we'll also be hearing from Connor Smith from Find Your Way Yorkshire. So quickly before we get started, I'll just outline some guidance to help the webinar flow and to ensure that you have the opportunity to ask questions. So quickly, let's just start with a couple of hellos. If you could all please click the chat icon at the top of your screen and say hello, and then add the full name of your club rather than the club abbreviation, so our presenters can identify you, see you, and also say a quick hello, I'm sure. Give you a quick moment just to pop a hello in the top. There we go. We have Ian in first. Hello, Ian. And Catherine from Interlopers as well. Excellent. So as I'll keep on going, but feel free to still put your hellos in the top. Good evening, Judith. So just during the presentation, if you have any questions, you can pop them in the chat. Now, usually what will happen is the presenters will see the questions, or I'll make a quick note of them. And then at the end, when we have the Q&A, I'll be able to pose those questions to our presenters on your behalf. Once we arrive at the Q&A session, we have 2 options for you to ask the questions. You can either pop them in the chat and I'll pick them up from there, or you can use the raise hand function along the top of your screen, which will be next to the chat button. And then you can wait just a quick minute and then we'll call upon you to unmute your microphone and ask the question. If we do run out of time, there'll be an option on the feedback form to pose any more questions, or if you wake up in the middle of the night thinking, I really wish I'd have asked Caroline about X, then there will be an opportunity for you to ask those questions. I'll get them sent over to our presenters, and in a week or so's time, I'll get those all back to you. Finally, we ask that you keep your microphone muted during the presentation, and that just to let you know, we will be recording this presentation and this will be posted and shared on our YouTube page. This means that anybody who's missed out, or anybody in the future, or even yourselves, if you want to have another go round, will be able to catch up on this anytime. With further ado, I will pass over to our lovely presenters to get the show on the road, and I will also share my screen with the presentation.
So thank you very much for coming, everybody. Andrew and I are going to be talking about how the Find Your Way project has helped with stakeholder relationships, but also why the benefits can apply to all the clubs out there, not just those who are linked with the Find Your Way project. So I'll pass over to Andrew for the next few slides.
Okay, thanks very much, Caroline, and welcome everybody. Yes, when we embarked on the Find Your Way project, we have found there's been some very positive developments from the stakeholder relationships. And obviously this is a very important area for all of us, given that we're run by volunteers and people are orienteering every week, and so it's absolutely cost down to a minimum. What I'm going to share with you hopefully is some nuances that have come from all the interactions that we've had over the last 2 or 3 years. But you're probably wondering, why me? Why am I presenting? That's probably a good question. Well, firstly, I was asked by Caroline due to the Find Your Way involvement, but I've always had a strong interest in stakeholder relationships, and in particular landowner liaison. Some of you will no doubt have come to the somewhat ill-fated BOC 2020, which because of COVID became BOC 2022. Now, that was an area that was completely new to orienteering, and as you can imagine, there's quite a few challenges there. Now, build in the fact there were 4 major landowners, 5 different individual couples whose property we were actually running over, and there were 2 tenant farmers and also an event centre. And one of the landowners was a conservation entity very much focused on nesting birds. So because you don't know any of these organisations and people, but because any one of them, if they pull the plug quite late on in the process, would have been disastrous for the whole event, as you can imagine, we had to spend quite a lot of time basically just getting to know these people, getting to know what was important to them, and managing all their expectations. So sharing some of that might be relevant to all clubs. But there's another reason why me. Firstly, the strong interest I've got in it means that I want to learn. I think you, hopefully, some of you will be doing things better than what we're doing, or have different ideas of things that are working well. So what I would encourage you to do is to share your own experiences so that we can all benefit from everybody who's on the call in terms of just improving perhaps what we do, or getting new ideas which we can reflect on afterwards. So that's a bit of background. Moving on to the next slide. I thought initially I should share with you a little bit about what we did in DFOC, or what we do in DFOC, irrespective of the Find Your Way project. And this is partly to be a catalyst for discussion, and it's the building blocks that we had in place. So obviously landowner liaison is the cornerstone of the permissions process, and in DFOC, for as long as I can remember, we've never had a single person who's been responsible for landowner liaison. And at the present time, we've got 5 people involved in landowner liaison. And there's a few reasons for that. Firstly, we've got over 40 areas, and so it's a huge job if it's just one person. But secondly, what we found over the years is that what's really important is to build up a very strong picture of what the nuances are for each of these individual people. And an area could have several different people, more than one landowner, and different owners of the event centre or the car park. So what we've seen as most important is continuity of interactions with landowners, because what we find is that you often only get to meet one of these people perhaps every few years. And once you've met them, of course, it's so much easier to have subsequent interactions. There's something about having seen the whites of the eyes of the other person. So we try and keep the same person liaising with the same area for as long as we can. The other thing is, when somebody moves on and somebody new comes in, we like to know that we can easily access all the other people previously that we've spoken with and drop names in and that sort of thing, just to make it apparent to the new person that we've been coming to this area for many, many years and there hasn't been any problems, etc. And I'm sure you do that sort of thing. But I thought I'd share with you 1 or 2 examples of the documentation that we keep. So on the next slide, We keep a master document, which is all our land access, which I guess you'll all be familiar with. We have club members named who's responsible for permissions. So what we don't want is different organisers phoning up different landowners just because they happen to be organising the next event. We take that away from organisers, one less thing for them to do with. And as you can see from the page numbers, for some of these areas, there's quite a lot of information that's in the document. And if we go to the next page, this is an example of just one small section of one particular area that we use, where we summarize the contact details, addresses, email, telephone number. And we also try and make a note of what we charged when we last used the area. Sometimes it's a fee, but obviously sometimes it's a donation. And what we want to try and avoid is having fluctuating donations, just because different organisers charge or donate different things. So we try and make it consistent from one event to another, so that we basically avoid unhelpful questions when it comes to the land access situation. And then moving on, it was an idea from one of our club members that they were saying, hang on a sec, every time I organise an event, I have to look up the postcode, I need to find the grid reference. Why can't they all be pulled together in a single place and shared? And so in our club, at the end of this land access document, this is page 39, I think, we set out what the postcodes and grid references are. And then the next stage we're looking to do is to add the what three words to it as well, just so that for the British Orienteering database, for the entry system, for the flyer, final details, that the information's at our fingertips rather than having to be reinventing of the wheel. So that sort of gives you a little bit of a flavour of some of the things that we did previously. And if we move on to the permanent orienteering courses that we have, this is relevant to Find Your Way, but we had 10 areas which had marker posts and plaques. They were all pretty actively managed. We have a permanent course officer whose role is to coordinate different people in the club to go around and check the posts are okay. So we kept them up to date, and fortunately most of our landowners are very happy to replace missing posts or missing markers. But we hadn't done any publicising of them, and we also have no idea, of course, of how many people are actually using them, but we suspect not a great deal were actually using them. So so that's where we were when we started the project. So now we come to the Find Your Way project, and I'll pass you back to Caroline.
So thanks, Andrew. When the Find Your Way project was set up, which was before I started with British Orienteering, we are now in year 3. There were 3 main aims: that it would be a link between British Orienteering clubs, but it would be club-led, and hopefully looking at collaboration with local trusted partners. Those partners could be as simple as the rangers at a park up to the local council. We wanted to introduce fully funded orienteering activities, but specifically into the heart of low socioeconomic areas. We know that there are a lot of people in a lot of areas who don't do a great deal. And one of the reasons they don't do very much is because they don't have the money to get very far. So if we can get orienteering activities into those hard to reach areas, we will hopefully encourage people to do a little bit more and to move around a bit more. And the third aim was to train local community leaders and teachers on how to access these virtual orienteering courses. And I know that the term virtual is a bit of a misnomer, but it's something that the club started to use during COVID. So it's something that the project has been using since the beginning. But what we wanted was local community leaders and teachers and anyone who was interested on how they could create their own courses or work on courses that were already created for them. So the project has moved around the country, and there's an awful lot of different areas which have been involved since the beginning, such as DFOK and Saxons in Kent, up to areas which are getting involved in this third year. So on the next slide, just a quick overview of the areas. Joe. Thank you. The areas that have been involved over the first 2 years, and some of the areas which were interested in getting involved in year 3. So some of those areas are still involved and are working into the third year. Some of those areas have been involved for 1 or 2 years, and some of those have come on board for year 3. Some of them we're still talking to, so we'll see where that goes. As you can see, we're spread across quite a lot of the country, but the Find Your Way project is aimed at those areas, but it can benefit everyone. And we hope that after today's session, you will see what some of the things that we've developed within the project will help you and your clubs to create those better relationships with partners. So focusing on the area that Andrew's working in, which is Dartford and Kent. So it's the South East London, Dartford and Kent areas, and Andrew's going to talk a little bit about the benefits that they have in that area. So if we can move on. So Dartford and Saxons have been working together.
Yeah.
Andrew.
So thank you, Caroline. So I think what was quite interesting is, and some other clubs might be in the same situation, when you've got an opportunity like this that is available, it's quite easy to jump on any old bandwagon and regret it later. So the committee wanted to think very carefully about whether it was a project that we should embark on. But one thing that most definitely tipped the balance in favour of participating in the project was that we could see that Kay Hawke, as the British Orienteering project leader at the time, had done a huge amount to help us to get going on the project before we'd even fully signed up for it. And what she'd done is she created lots of links through British Orienteering with various sports partnerships in Kent. And as an example, this included Kay getting on the mailing list and getting an invitation to what was the inaugural Kent and Medway Active Sports Partnership launch. And I say that because previously Medway, as a unitary authority, was outside of Kent CC, but the two entities were coming together from a sports perspective to create an active sports partnership. And that was a full day or most of a day conference, I understand. And because of the networking opportunities, Kay generated several opportunities of contacts that she met there, which she didn't just sit on, she passed to us after the conference. And we could immediately see that there were some very useful links here that we could build on to further the club, and not just through Find Your Way, just through relationship development. But the other thing that it became clear was that the people that we talked with, and we had follow-on emails and calls after the initial inaugural conference, they wanted to deal with Kent as a whole. They didn't want to deal with Dartford and segregation. It was really important to their objectives that what they offered in Kent would be able to be offered for the whole of Kent. And that's the reason why Dartford and Saxons got our heads together and we separately agreed that it would be beneficial for us to become a joint partner in dealing with the project, so that either one of us would be seen as representing the same entity as far as the various different sort of stakeholders were concerned. So moving on to the next slide, I thought I'd share with you a little bit about what we did. That's probably quite important. So obviously following up all the links that Kay had developed was key, and following them quite quickly. And what we did is we offered to meet with as many of them as we could. And we offered to meet not at their offices, but we invited them in most cases to one of the local parks that was as close to where their offices were, and a place where we had an orienteering map. And the thinking behind this was that we would set up a course using check sites, which had a start and a finish and 2 or 3 controls, so a very small area, typically a 1K type of walk along footpaths. And that was partly to demonstrate the app. But interestingly, it became clear from the very first one of these that when you're walking with somebody from a stakeholder on a 1K walk, you've got a very captive audience, and they know they've got a very captive audience as well. And so what these sort of demonstrations turned out to be was a great opportunity to understand what the objectives were of each of these different stakeholders. And what we found was the objectives were pretty common. So the first thing was that people really liked the app. They liked the idea it bleeped. They liked the idea it changed color. They liked the idea there was a hard copy map. And therefore, they thought it was going to be an interesting thing for get involved with. They obviously like the emphasis on areas of deprivation, which Caroline mentioned at the start, because one of their objectives is generally that they are looking to get people who are not particularly active, getting those people more active. And so it played to what they were seeking to do themselves, which is always helpful. The second thing was that one of them, Tunbridge and Malling in particular, really liked the fact that the app, it was an app because they were challenged to use modern technology, and they'd gone down a route of actually paying for an app, and they could see that because the map run app was basically much easier and cheaper to access, that could have potential benefits for them. And another key thing of all these things is that the organizations are wanting to get people active, but in a very low cost way. So the fact that under the Find Your Way project, it was able to be offered as a free activity for people, obviously that finished ticking the key boxes that the various stakeholders were interested in. So we learned quite a lot about what we should try to do and what were the areas we should try to focus on. And if we move on to the next slide, we use the walks to explain to people that the big challenge we have and why the project might well fail is because we don't have the communication channels to the people that we needed to reach. And I mean, I think that's always been a challenge within orienteering. You know, like probably many other clubs, we spent a lot of time and some money doing all sorts of different ways of interacting with people and finding virtually no take up. So because we got a very enthusiastic response to what we were trying to do, we also found that each of these meetings led to further doors being opened.
So one of the things that we really helps the clubs is the publicity, but it's to make sure it's no good just having publicity which goes into a park. You need to actually use social media now. you need other people to actually join in with that promotion and to promote what is actually happening within the clubs. So if other people are promoting what the clubs are doing, social media takes a much bigger profile of the publicity, and British Orienteering and the Find Your Way project were able to help the clubs by producing better quality and improved publicity. So there's some examples on the next slide. So each club did their own thing, but the Dartford Orienteers wanted some information on the back of their maps, which we created for them, showing what was going on, what was coming up, explaining a little bit about virtual courses and what permanent courses were available. So each club, some clubs did their own, some clubs took, as you can see, Saxons took it on themselves and created their own list of bits of information. And we were also able to create information about a particular park or particular area where there were Find Your Way courses. So lots of different publicity. Each piece of publicity helps to enhance the profile of orienteering, because it's going out not just to us, not just to our we know our orienteers, but actually to members of the public as well. And we're able to produce that publicity to go out to members of the public. Andrew's mentioned some of the partners that Dartford and Saxons worked with. On the next slide, there's a whole range of different partners from around the country. Now, different clubs have different things, different groups that they can work with. London Sport was obviously there, Birmingham 2022, the Commonwealth Games. City of Birmingham Orienteers got involved with Commonwealth Games. Ayr got involved with Active Leeds. The PFO got involved with the Canal and River Trust. As Andrew said, Tunbridge and Malling Borough Council were a great group to get involved with. Active Calderdale was used to get links with for Epoch in Yorkshire, Natural England in different places across the country. Holiday activity and foods, the HAF programs. We've got one up there for Kent, but a lot of the country, a lot of different groups around the country have HAF programs where they're really looking for activities that they can give to their local children during holiday time. NHS Beat the Streets is some of you may have heard of that. It's a national project where they pick an area, local council picks an area, most recently in Reading in Berkshire, and nearly 7,000 people got involved with Beat the Streets. And Berkshire Orienteers have now had the opportunity to feed back to those 7,000 people who took part with activities that have been left behind as for people to actually get involved with. The outdoor classroom is another one. Josh Jenner is working with schools to promote activity within schools. And although it's something that some schools will pay for, there's also a free version. So schools can get involved with a free version, and that's being developed with links with British Orienteering out into local councils and local parks. So lots of links we've created for the clubs, and lots of things the clubs have taken on and created themselves, this hasn't always come from British Orienteering. Some of it has come from links that the clubs themselves have developed because they've talked to Tunbridge and Malling Borough Council, and Sevenoaks Council have said, well, can you come and do it for us? So lots of different links have come from one small starting point. So what are the learnings though? So if we move on to the next slide, and I'll pass back to Andrew to talk about some of the things that he's come back with for Dartford and Saxons.
Yeah, apologies that I seem to drop off, but I'll just share with you a little bit more about what we actually did through the linkages. Very helpfully, Kent CC put us in touch with Explore Kent and Active Kent, and these are bodies that maintain a list of all sports activities that are available, and they were willing to publicise the activities that we were doing free of charge, and that includes some social media that they do. And then initial contacts put us in contact with the obesity champions. There are 3 obesity champions in the whole of Kent, and one of those we made contact with a MenCap group who were interested. So these are different organisations that you might say, well, they're never going to be Orienteering club members, and that's correct. That may be the case, but it's all helping to publicise, I think, in a wider context, what is Orienteering. And it's all aiming to help to achieve the objectives that we're trying to do, which is get people active. And, you know, it only takes 1 or 2 people to join a club for many of these things. And for some of us, it can make quite a difference to the club. What it led to is an understanding that the benefit would be if we did some launch activities, Find Your Way launch activities, where we'd have a table and a chair at a location, and we would have 3 courses to choose from and publicise it in advance with a lot of help from Kay and Caroline in British Orienteering, who would promote it through the British Orienteering social media. And the rationale behind having 3 courses is to have a short, a medium and a long, all of which were walking courses. So it wasn't intended to be run, it was keeping to paths. The short course was always wheelchair and pushchair friendly, and it was quite interesting how quite a few people who came along it was in the school holidays, some of them were, and it was 3 generations of a family, but we might well have found one had a pushchair and one had a wheelchair, and in some cases one of each. And if we hadn't had a course that was suitable for pushchair, wheelchair, the number of people who participated would have been significantly lower, I think. What we also did was we held them in areas where we had permanent courses, but we did not use the permanent courses for any of the launch activities. And the rationale behind that was that this was an introductory opportunity to get used to the app and to get out in the open space. And the publicity that Caroline's just shared included the information that we made available to all people when they completed their course, which set out not just how else to do map run exercises, but also a bit about orienteering, as you might have seen, and also where else, how they could use the permanent markers and the permanent courses to come back to the same location, but just do something different. One of the stakeholders that we, well, the learnings that we've got from it, I'll probably share some of those that are on the screen. Firstly, we found it's imperative that we set up where there's a lot of people passing. So the ideal place is sort of somewhere between the car park and the entrance, along the entrance into the open space, particularly on a direct line to the cafe, because some people were primarily coming to the cafe. The people who did it liked the app. That was very positively received. To get people to participate in it, we found that I would say half the people who came to our launch activities, despite all the publicity that we'd all done, arrived not knowing there was anything taking place that day. So we call them walk-ins. And the usual question was along the lines of, are you interested in doing something different today? It's free of charge and it's like a treasure hunt. And mum or dad would usually look at the kids and say, are you interested in that? And Jimmy would say, yes, mum, let's have a go. And whilst not every child responded positively, it was the pull of the children that probably led to several families and family groups deciding to do the Find Your Way activity, just having come to the area without knowing it was taking place. So one of the learning points is that despite doing a lot of publicity, it's still incredibly hard work to get people to come along. And we've probably learned something how we can improve on the publicity, but we're not seeing it as an easy win. The other thing is, despite making available quite a lot of information about what follow-on activities were, we've actually got relatively little evidence of too many people coming back and doing it again. But what we did find, which we hadn't expected, is that quite a few of our newer club members who didn't tend to go to events very far from where they lived came along to these Find Your Way activities, and in some cases it's helped them to get more into orienteering and hence more likely to renew their membership. And this comes back to the point from the, if you might remember, the Newcomer Retention Group report that highlighted that to get people hooked on orienteering, one of their suggestions was that you needed to hold a fairly regular series of events. And although they were Find Your Way activities, there's still events on our website that are publicised, and our own club members came along in some cases and helped to not to run them, but to actually participate. And then there've been some other benefits from the Find Your Way project, which are totally unexpected, which I will share with you now. The next slide, Joe. So the first thing not on the slide is that Gravesham District Council, they have a programme that works in the summer, which is called Summer of Fun. And it's about a 40-page little booklet, A5 size, and it lists a huge number of activities that families can do during the school holidays. And we had part of a page on that for the Find Your Way activities, 2 Find Your Way launch activities that we were running. And that booklet got distributed to 14,000 school children in Gravesham. We didn't get a large number of people come along, but we got some. But coincidentally, and this is total coincidence, I met with the Summer of Fun coordinator at lunchtime today, and we did a take stock of what we were doing, and they're very pleased with the whole response that they had from the Summer of Fun. They're wanting to do it again this next year, and it's going to consist of launch events at different locations. And at the same time, we are developing a map run walk around the riverside of Gravesham for them, where the controls are 12 different sites in Gravesend, and that'll link to information points so that people can walk around and learn more about what's on offer in Gravesend. Then part of the Find Your Way project, we had a map prepared for us for a school where, I say school, if you were to look at it, it would look more like a farm. There are no classrooms, there's no brick buildings, there are some wooden huts, and it's for people not able to be taught in classrooms, and they are taught on a one-to-one basis. They have 8 to 10 pupils at a time and 8 or 10 teachers, but they use phones and they use iPads because that's all part of the learning. And we set up a course there. We've trained the trainer, and that's a key part of the Find Your Way project. And fortunately they came to us, and the lead teacher there is ex-mountain rescue person from South Wales, who now has moved to Southeast London. So very familiar with maps, very familiar with orienteering, and very comfortable with Purple Pen, taking that forward, developing the own courses. And the courses can create letters from the markers that they've put in place. And one of the examples is that one of them spells the word pig, which is not too difficult to get if you get the right 3 letters. And another one, though, is to teach the children the values that they're trying to get across. So, for instance, we have a course that has an anagram of the word respect, and there are other values as well. Then another Train the Trainer project is that one of the scout camps we have a map of, we found that there was an organisation that comes in the school holidays and gets children on free school meals and provides activities for them. They want to do orienteering using the map on one of these weeks, and they have several sessions in a week, 8 children at a time with their parents or guardians. And the first one, we did an orienteering session for a whole morning, some guidance on how to use a map, some of the introductory activities that you'll all be familiar with, like the cones exercise. And then they did a map run course. And in the second year, the leader just took what they'd gained from the first year and ran the whole thing themselves without any involvement from anybody from the club, using just the same materials. So again, that's the sort of sustainability that we're looking for and hoping for. We've got a Girl Guide camp who we're setting up map run for them. And then at the Kent County Council parks, the rangers run activities. And so what we've done is taken their walking trails and we've put those onto map run so that they can not only provide the walking trails to people who come along, but to make it more interesting for the children, they can use the map run app, and so that it bleeps when they get to the points. So instead of mum saying, let's go on a 1K walk, it's much more, let's go on a hunt for these checkpoints, and you hold the mobile phone and it rings. So we're trying to make things more interesting. So those are some of the sustainability examples, because these are people who lead activities without our involvement. But in all of these cases, they're also willing to promote events that the club are holding to people who come to their locations, particularly the Scout and Girl Guide camps and where there are ranger-led activities. In other words, they can hand out an information sheet which provides some information about the club. And then moving on to the last slide that I've got, Joe. Over to Caroline first. Yeah.
What we have here is just some examples of different groups that have been trained. So we've got rangers, we've got scout leaders, teachers, just different people in different parts of the country where we've actually done the training so that they will go away and deliver orienteering to groups or students, or just hand out our leaflets, the club leaflets, just so that they know what's going on. Andrew talked a little while back about we don't know how many people are coming back, and making sure that the publicity was out there. So it's really important that the courses are able to be promoted. One of the things that we're trying to do using the Find Your Way project is to create boards that are going to be left in the park. As you can see, there's an example there, Brockhill Country Park, which is in Kent, which has a permanent course and Find Your Way courses within it. It explains how to use the Find Your Way course. It gives them a QR code to get to the Find Your Way courses, and it helps them know that there are orienteering opportunities in that park. If you don't tell people there's anything there, they're not going to go back and use the courses again, whether it's permanent courses or map run courses. by putting the posters out there, by getting something on notice boards, by giving something to rangers, teachers, leaders to take away and give out, you're promoting what is left in the park, and you're promoting the legacy that you as a club are creating. And hopefully you're going to get people coming back. We do know that just by having the display posters in the park, we've had on several parts where these posters have been left, that there's 1 or 2 people a week going in and logging into a mat run course. We don't know if they're doing a permanent course, we don't know if they finish it, but they're certainly starting, they're certainly finding out about mat run, and hopefully they're going on to create more, to look at more opportunities for doing orienteering. So if we move on to the POC development, Andrew.
Yes, this is something we've learned, is that we've now made our POCs always having a more simple course that is suitable for newcomers, for local rangers to brief them on, wheelchair access in many cases, because that links, as I said earlier, to the objectives of the rangers in these different places. And then another thing we've done is set up a couple of tree trails. So in Lullingstone and also in Cobham, they already had a tree trail, but neither of them have got any promotion of any significance. And one of them is very new, and one of them is extremely difficult to navigate because it's a 6.5k course to visit all 10 of these impressive trees. But it's a bit of backward and forward, and what we've done there is developed a map run app so that the blue dot is visible, so that people can use that course and use the app as a way of actually getting around the course, because there's plenty of pitfalls that if they take a wrong turning, they won't even get back to the visitor centre. They'll come out on the main road at a completely different place and find themselves at least 2 kilometres away from how to get back to the visitor centre. So that's an example of interaction on the trails. And then the last thing is probably the most encouraging aspect of this from a financial point of view. If we turn to the last slide, Joe, we've actually had some financial benefits from participating in the Find Your Way project. We knew there was an opportunity to have some areas mapped, and we'd already got a map of one particular area, but it wasn't big enough to hold a major event on it or a significant event on it. But because we had an area of deprivation, particular deprivation in London Borough of Hackney, one of the 10 Sport England highest emphasis areas for getting people active in a housing estate, we arranged for that to be mapped. And then when we put the two areas together, we found it was large enough to run a park race series event. And we had 110 people at that event that we held in July of 2023. So that was an unexpected benefit. I've already touched on the contributing to member retention, but we've also found that Dartford has agreed to run the British Schools Orienteering Championships in 2024. And when we went to the Rangers at Kent County Council to get land permission, they immediately said, well, because of all the stuff you're working with us on, we won't charge you the usual charge that we would have levied for an event of that size. If you just give us a small donation afterwards, that would be sufficient. And that's quite a substantial saving. And then there's a farm trust where they already had an orienteering course and a map from the club, and they have open days, and we helped at one of the open days with a Find Your Way launch activity. It's a place we use for our teacher orienteering courses, and we get a reduced charge for the hire of the room for the teacher orienteering course, which means the cost to us is less than half what it would be if we hadn't provided the input. So in several of these cases, these are these are wins, but the starting point is always, like was mentioned on the seminar on Monday, the starting point is to deliver something and establish the relationships. And then once you've done that, some of the other benefits can flow afterwards, because they see that you've given something of real value and are quite happy to see if they can assist as well. So those are just a few thoughts from our involvement in Find Your Way. I think that moves on to the last slide, which is Connor.
So thank you very much, Andrew, for going through what we're talking about, what Dartford and Saxons have done together. One of the things that has definitely come from the Find Your Way project is that it's really important how you promote your orienteering event. We just recently, the Deeside Orienteers did a Find Your Way activity between it was on the Friday after Christmas. We were very lucky with the weather, but Ian at D had done a lot of promotional and promotion with local groups and local schools, and that really made a difference. We had over 130 people come through that, and actually 3/4 of those came because of promotional material that had been put out there in advance. There were a few walk-ins, but most of them came because they knew we were there. So as I said, one of the things that we do know makes a difference is promoting your orienteering activity, and somebody who's done an awful lot of that for Yorkshire and also for the rest of the Find Your Way project is Connor. So I'd just like to hand over to Connor now so that he can explain some of the things which are really useful when promoting your event. So if we hand over to Connor and move on to the next slide.
Yeah, so as Andrew was mentioning, publicity could be quite hard, and a lot of clubs don't necessarily know what to do or know what works well and what doesn't work well, what's going to maximise their time or maybe maximise money if you're spending money on promotion. So I saw the Find Your Way project as a great opportunity to have an experiment over 3 years, try as many promotional things as possible and see what worked and what doesn't. And now we're kind of starting to get an idea of what works when promoting an event. This isn't just Find Your Way specific. These same things can be used for promoting any orienteering event where you want to attract newcomers, whether it's a Find Your Way event, a Level D, a Saturday series, anything like that. If you think you've got the courses to attract newcomers, you can use these promotional tools. I'm just going to talk through them and basically talk through why they're good to use. So the first one is posting on social media, but make sure you're posting on social media 3 or 4 weeks out from your event, and then posting regularly at least once a week. The reason to do this is, first of all, you might be targeting families who like to plan in advance. So you're giving them lots of prior warning of your event. Some people miss posts, so they might miss the first few posts but see ones later on. Some people become interested in an event or an opportunity after they've seen the post multiple times. They might not tag on the first time that they're interested, but when they see it multiple times, it kind of builds up in their brain and then they become interested. And lastly, some people wait till the last minute to decide if they want to go to an event or not. So if you've done one post about it a few weeks ago and then no more, then that person who is maybe looking for something to do last minute is going to miss out. The second thing is posting those social media posts from your club's Facebook or anything like that into local relevant Facebook groups. If you go into Facebook and just type in the search bar for whatever your local area is, There'll be loads of clubs that groups that come up, things that specifically around like things to do for families or community groups and stuff like that. And if you're having an event in that area, post into that Facebook group. The reason to do this is you're accessing a already established community of people. You're targeting a local audience in that area of your event. You're targeting a specific group of people, and D have had a lot of success of targeting and posting into local Facebook groups with their events they've been doing. The next one is paid ads, and this is something that a lot of people maybe are unsure how to do, and if that is the case, you can reach out to me, you can reach out to Caroline, and we can find someone who can give you a hand on this. But you can do this from Facebook, you can do this from Instagram, where you can pay an amount of money. It doesn't have to be a lot of money, it can be 10, 20, 30 pounds, and you can have your post boosted to pop up on other people's feeds when they're scrolling through Facebook or Instagram. But you can target the people that you want to see this post. You can target it by a specific location and radius. You can target by specific interests, ages, target audience. So you can really hone in on the people and the target audience that you're trying to focus on, and they're going to see your posts about a specific event you might be having. The next one is get in touch with friends of groups. Me personally, working with the clubs in Yorkshire, have found massive value working with friends of groups. A couple of reasons is these people are keen to get people in their parks. They are a friends of group because they love their park and they want people to come and use it. So if you can get them on board, they will do the work for you. They will do the promotion for you. They will find the contacts for you. They will, you know, in a lot of times, sort of allow you to have an event on that park at no cost because you're co-hosting that event with them. So friends of groups have been absolutely massive. And some of the friends of groups that Epoch have worked with, particularly at Shrogs Park, they've gone on to run events using the maps and map run courses that we set up under the Find Your Way project on their own. So they're doing their own events now with these courses. So they're promoting Epoch without us being there, which is fantastic. The next one's working with local active partnerships. So Caroline and Kay have probably done a lot of work with kind of building these contacts and building these networks with active partnerships. Keep in touch with them and send them any promotional material that you've got. Oftentimes these local active partnerships have got social media pages, Facebook pages, Instagram pages with quite a large following. So them posting your asset on their page gets a lot of eyeballs on it. A lot of them also have newsletters as well. So if you can have a feature in their weekly or monthly newsletter, again, that's a lot of eyes on it. But also they have money as well, and their objectives are the same objectives as the project. They want people in that area to be active. So if you can keep in touch with that local active partnership and build a good relationship, it's something that is going to last beyond the Find Your Way project. When the money of the Find Your Way project isn't there anymore, there may be money with the active partnership that will be there to help you with specific projects. The next thing is if you've got a park that has a park run set up there, go and attend that park run. Go and get a couple of your members to volunteer at that park run and have a couple of members hand out maps and flyers after the event. We found this particularly successful in Yorkshire for promoting an event that you might have in that park later on, because you're promoting your event to a target audience which will be interested in it. You know, people who are doing 5k a lot of the time, doing 5k for social reasons, because you know they want to go and do a 5k and chat with friends. And orienteering really resonates with that target audience. But also we found it really useful for kind of networking and building contacts as well. the amount of people that I've bumped into while I've been handing out flyers or maps at a park run that have been teachers at a local school, people who are, you know, working in a scout group, people who are part of a friends of group at that park or another park, and then opportunities then become of that. So that's a really useful one as well. And then one that isn't on the list that's also really useful is reach out to local running clubs and local running retailers and things like that as well, because often these people have got kind of groups and target audiences that you're trying to reach. I'm sure more of that we'll start to see sort of this year as well. So yeah, if anyone's got any questions about any of those, obviously feel free to ask me at the end.
Thank you very much, Connor, and thank you to Andrew as well for taking most of that session with just a little bit of input from me. So we've finished our presentation. So really it's over to anybody in the audience now who would like to ask any questions. If you've got anything, if you know specifically whether it's Andrew, myself or Connor that you'd like to speak with, or if it's in general question that one of us will answer.
I'll appear back out of the woodwork now. Yeah, as Caroline said, so if anybody does have any questions, you can either put them in the chat, which is on the top bar, should be under the chat header, or you can click just by there on the raise hand button, and I'll be able to just call upon you to unmute. And I've just clicked the raise hand, but for some reason that's just... let's have a quick look. You all might be getting a bit lucky here. You might be off the hook.
So, as I say, if there is anything that, even if you're not a Find Your Way club, if there's anything you think that you've heard tonight that you'd like some more information about, then either contact myself at British Orienteering, or if you want to contact or Kay or Joe, and one of us will answer that question, pass on information, and hopefully support you in developing the relationships that some of which you've got, but some of which you also hopefully have got a few ideas about how you might get a few more of those relationships. Anything that comes to British Orienteering, we always pass it on to you, to the clubs that are local and the clubs that are relevant. So we will pass on information from stakeholder groups, lots of scout and guide groups. We met September last year, and we met lots of scout and guide groups who were really interested in taking orienteering further. The one thing they said to us was, you never see a teenager without their mobile phone in their hand. So combining mobile phones with orienteering is something that a lot of the group leaders are very interested in. So if you have local scout groups, they are definitely people worth reaching out to, as well as going back to Monday's session, where looking at offering something to a local school that might be interested if they get involved with you. So doesn't seem to be anybody who wants.
You've just got a question in as you say that. So Ian is asking, where is the information about setting up MapRun?
So if you want some information about setting up MapRun, if you look on the MapRun website, then you can get some information there. Each club usually needs a MapRun admin. It's not a difficult job. I've managed it, and I'm not particularly technically minded. And then if you contact Peter at MapRun, he will help you with getting started with setting up MapRuns.
Excellent. What I will do is I'll pop it in the chat in a minute, the email addresses for myself and Howard, but on the email that will go out tomorrow after the session, I can also pop on Caroline's email and any other extra information that could be of help. There's also a link to the feedback form where you can put any other questions on. If you do want to just ask a question, if you wake up in the middle of the night and think, I was dying to ask Andrew this question and it completely slipped my mind, so there'll be an opportunity for that as well. Catherine's also just linked in the chat a bit of info on MapRun as well on Scottish Orienteering site, so that's another place that you can go and have a quick look. But in that case, I'll bring things to a close, I suppose. A huge thank you to Caroline, Andrew and Connor for the presentation, and slight apologies for me missing a couple of the clicks, but I'm sure I think we got through it just fine. It's been excellent having everybody here. Huge thank you to everybody who's attended tonight. In due course, you'll receive the email about the extra information, and the session will be also up on YouTube tomorrow, which means you'll be able to go back and watch any of the bits through if there is anything that you've forgotten. And also there'll be an option with the YouTube link as well. If you do wish to share that, there's another good opportunity as well. But in that case, thank you all very much for attending. Again, thank you to the presenters, and